friends. We are back for the last lab video. Today is all about the movements of the inferior appendages. So we were talking about hip movements, knee movements, ankle movements. That's the big three for today. We're starting out with the hip. You guys remember the hip joint? Got the femur hitting the acetabulum of the hip bone. Good old ball and socket joint. It's going to have a lot of motion. It's going to be a multi-axial joint. Here we see two of those motions. We got flexion. Flexion is where we are decreasing that hip angle, of course. So if you were a human being and I'm looking at you from the side, so here's your head. There you go. And for some reason your arms are out like that. Okay, that's you from the side. And then you pick up that one hip. So we picked up that one hip. That one, and there's your arm out to the side again. That one hip right there. Boom, right there. That angle change, that is flexion. Now you bring that hip back down, you straighten that angle out, and then you even take it backwards, that's extension. So decrease the hip angle, hip flexion. Increase the hip angle is hip extension. So those are two of the major movements. Other movements include abduction. So taking your leg out like so, like imagine you are doing jumping jacks. So the leg motions you're doing when you're doing jumping jacks, first your legs go out, that's abduction. Then your legs come back in, that's adduction. You can also rotate, turn your toes out, it's lateral rotation, turn your toes in is medial rotation. So these are our basic hip movements. We're going to hit some muscles that are going to do these. So we have our torso model here, and all the guts have been removed, so we can see the muscles that are kind of towards the posterior of the pelvis here. And we got this muscle right here outlined in yellow, sitting kind of underneath that kidney right there. See the other one over on the side? This one outlined in yellow is called the psoas major. The psoas major. The one over here in blue is the iliacus. Both of these guys are going to slide down. You don't see where they're going in this model, but they're going down to grab onto the femur. And in grabbing onto the femur, they pull it up and they flex that hip. So these two guys, psoas major, iliacus, they are synergists because they are flexing the hip. Oftentimes, they're described together as being the iliopsoas. So we could talk about them separately or as a collective unit. The iliacus, not surprisingly, is attached to the iliac part of the hip bone. Psoas major has a unique characteristic in that it is the only lower appendage muscle that's attached to vertebrae. All right. With that, let's see if we can see these guys on another model. Let's see if we can do that. I think we'll see them later. We're moving on to another hip flexor here. This long, skinny, ribbon-like muscle. It's the longest muscle you got. It is known as the sartorius. Sartorius. It is a hip flexor. It's not too powerful because it is so skinny. It also is an abductor. So remember abduction. Let's draw a little abduction here. Here is you from the front. You're happy because you're doing anatomy class. And I'm going to draw your left leg abducted. Your left leg is kicking out there. So your psoas major helps you do that. It also laterally rotates the thigh. I don't know what the thigh is. Laterally rotates the thigh and even flexes the knee. Imagine if you were looking at the bottom of your shoe to see if there were gum on it. Okay? So you're looking at the bottom of your shoe to see if there's gum on it. Your foot is in front of your body. You're not like looking over behind your shoulder or anything. If you do that, you're using your sartorius. Sartorius literally means tailor because this is like the classic sitting position of a tailor. When you're sitting like this, crisscross applesauce style, your hip is flexed, your knee is flexed, your femur is rotated laterally, and those are all jobs of that sartorius. Okay, awesome. If we look here, we got that sartorius again. Check it out. We also have another flexor of the hip, this guy outlined in yellow right here. He is called the rectus femoris. Rectus because he's more or less straight, femoris because he's sitting on top of that femur. It's going to originate on the iliac part of the hip bone and insert onto the base of the patella. We will meet it later because it is one of your quads, one of your quadriceps muscles, and that is a group of muscles, 4 muscles that are going to extend the knee. So we're going to meet it later on. But for now, check it out. That is the rectus femoris. All right, we got a muscular human being right here. She's got all kinds of muscles going on. We can see her sartorius. Look at that right sartorius. That is a hard muscle to see for like 99.9% of people. You don't see it. But that's her sartorius right there. We also see kind of a diamond-esque shape to her rectus femoris. She's got nice rectus femoris right there. We see the other rectus femoris right there popping out. Now, we don't see the psoas major or the iliacus. Why not? Well, if we backtrack for a second, let's go back to that picture real quick. Let's go back. Look how deep they are, right? So they're deep muscles. You're not going to see them on the surface the way you'll see the sartorius, or even more likely, the rectus femoris. Okay, we are going to see 2 muscles we've already met. We got the sartorius right here. We got the rectus femoris right here. We're adding a third hip flexor in this view. Right here, we got a hip flexor with a long name. It is called the tensor fasciae latae. It's going to flex your hip. It's going to abduct your thigh as well. Tensor because it pulls, it tenses. It pulls on connective tissue. This is actually the connective tissue that it pulls on right down here with the number 4 on it. This connective tissue is kind of wide. That's the latae part on the lateral thigh. It's wide on the lateral thigh. The fascia part refers to the connective tissue itself. So this is the tensor fasciae latae, and this connective tissue it pulls on is called the iliotibial tract. Sometimes you might see it as band. It's often known as the IT band. If you are like an athletic trainer or physical therapist, you often hear them talking about it as the IT band. It's all good though. Okay, let's check out a human's tensor fasciae latae. You can see hers right there. Again, hard to see this muscle in most people. And by the way, you should be able to pause this video and name just a bunch of upper body muscles here. You might want to do that for a quick little review. All right, we're done with the flexors. Moving onward to the big muscle of the butt, which is, as its name translates, the gluteus maximus. So we see it over here. There's a glute right there. We also see it from the side over there. And we see it on the human person as well. Nice gluteus maximus here. It is going to be the major extensor of the hip joint. So it is going to straighten your hip joint. So this is somebody who is in a squatting position. They've got their legs. There they go. Their arms are attached to their face for some reason. but that's all right. Then if they stand up, if they straighten those hips, the straightening of the hips is done by the gluteus maximus. So anytime you get up out of a chair, you get up off of a bench, you are using your gluteus maximus. If we rip that gluteus maximus off, we tear it right off, there is a muscle deep to it. So the glute max was sitting over top right here. The glute max was right here, and we dissected it off. And underneath it, we see a muscle, which I will outline for you right here, called the gluteus medius. There's also a gluteus minimus too that we're going to ignore. But that's the gluteus medius right there. It is a strong abductor. The tensor fasciae latae was an abductor. Your sartorius was an abductor. This guy's an abductor too. It's going to originate on the lateral part of the ilium, the iliac part of the hip, comes down, grabs onto that bony hip prominence, which is the greater trochanter of the femur, and it is going to abduct that thigh. So again, abduction of the thigh is where that one leg is out like so, out to the side. Okay? This person has really big feet and no arms. Weird. Okay, so in this view, so now we've rotated around, we actually get a sneak piece of the iliopsoas right there. If you find that trio, blood vessels and the nerve, and you find the sartorius, you can see the iliopsoas, just a chunk of it hanging out right there. The set of blood vessels and the nerve is a good key. That little chunk right there is the iliopsoas. Plus, we see our sartorius snaking its way across the thigh there. And we see the rectus femoris as well. I don't know why there's a number 9 right here. Whoopsie. Let's get our drawing tool going. I don't know why there's a 9 there. Let's scratch that out. That's weird. Random numbers appear in my slides. Who did that? We see other stuff here. We're going to see muscles that draw the thigh inward. Hey, did you notice the muscles that were abductors that pulled the thigh out were on the outside? So the muscles that are going to bring the thigh in are going to be on the inside, on the medial side. Makes perfect, beautiful sense. Let's start with this muscle right here. Very vertical muscle right here. It is called the gracilis. Gracilis means like the thin one, the slender one. It's kind of slender. I mean, it's a little bit wide here. If you look at it, from the front view, it's pretty papery, pretty thin. But that's the gracilis. So always find that gracilis first, and that gracilis leads you to the other two adductor muscles. In front of it, we have the adductor longus, and behind it, we have the adductor magnus. I always used to remember L comes before M. So longus is in the front, magnus is in the back, and the gracilis is right down the middle. These guys are going to adduct the thigh. They're going to adduct the thigh. So let's say we were looking at somebody making snow angels. So they're lying down on their back. They're making snow angels. Their arms are out like so. Their legs are out like so. They have really weird proportions, this guy. And then we then see them a moment later, and now they are like this. Now they're like that. So in going from the legs out position, we'll call that position A, to the legs more in position, that's position B, that is adduction. And 3 muscles involved in that, 3 synergists doing that are the gracilis in the middle, the adductor magnus in the back, and the adductor longus in the front. Awesome. So, looking in the back view of this model here, we see that glute maximus right there, that gracilis in the middle of the medial thigh, and since we're taking a look in the back, we see the adductor magnus, but we don't see the adductor longus. It would be around the front. We don't quite have that view here. Awesome. All right, hey, This is fantastic. We're done with the hip. Now I got to do the knee. I think the knee is a little bit easier because the knee is not a ball and socket joint, it is a hinge joint. So hinge joint is going to be able to do flexion and extension. When the knee is flexed, that knee angle is small. When the knee is extended, that knee angle is large. All right. If we start with our extensors, and this is actually going to blow up one of our mnemonic devices. So in a previous video, I told you to remember that flexors are generally in front. That was true for the neck. It was true for the shoulder. It was true for the elbow. It was true for the wrist. It was true for the trunk. It's true for the hip, but it's not true for the knee. In the knee, the flexors are in the back and the extensors are in the front. If we look at this model, we've met this model already. We got that sartorius beautiful right there. Always find that sartorius. There's those blood vessels and nerve, which makes you say hello to the iliopsoas. There's that tensor fasciae lati. Look how the two right there kind of form an upside down V over the rectus femoris. Now, the rectus femoris, who we met earlier, is one of our quadriceps femoris group. So this is a group of 4 muscles that are going to work to extend the knee. So we got the rectus femoris. He's one of our quads. We also see the vastus medialis on the inside. Vastus means vast, means big. And the vastus lateralis on the outside. The 4th member of this tetrad is the vastus intermedius. We don't see it because it is deep. It is under the rectus femoris. If we look at this human leg over here, here is a vastus medialis. I see the vastus medialis right here as well. Here's a lateralis, and we see the lateralis over there too. And there's a rectus femoris right there in the middle with the 5 on it right there. Okay, so we can see 3 of our 4 quads here. All right, let's get rid of all this. Check out another model here. There's that rectus femoris. On the inside there, we got the vastus medialis. You can totally see that. Don't forget, rectus femoris originates on the ilium, inserts on the base of the patella. Now, we're looking at the back of the thigh here. There's the gluteus maximus, okay? So find that glute max up at the top, easy to find it. There's that gracilis on the inside, and there's that adductor magnus. Now we do see the hamstring muscle groups here, okay? So we got, let's put 1, 2, 3 muscles making up the hamstrings. Ham refers to the back of the knee. The strings refers to the tendons. You can find the tendons of these muscles in the back of your knee. The lateral one here is called the biceps femoris. That's why we don't just say biceps, right? You have a biceps brachii in the arm and a biceps femoris in the thigh. Medially, so 5 and 6 here, are a pair of muscles stacked upon one another. The superficial one is the semitendinosus. The deeper one is the semimembranosus. So membranosus on the bottom, tendinosus on the top. So semi for both of them. I always remember the one with the T is the one on the top. Then we have to know one set of bony attachments for these hamstrings. The biceps femoris originates up on that ischial tuberosity and on the linea aspera of the femur, and inserts down the head of the fibula, which we don't quite see here. All right. Magnificent. Let's look at a human person. So in this human person, right here we got the hamstrings. Outside one, biceps femoris. Semitendinosus on top of semimembranosus. Okay. Sweet. The knee is done. Guys, all we got to do is one more joint. This is the final joint, is the ankle joint. There are 2 movements of the ankle joint, and for some weird reason, they're both referred to as flexion. So there's dorsiflexion. That's where you're bringing your toes up, like like if you were to walk on your heels, your toes and your OD up, your ankle would be in a dorsiflexed position. Now, if you stand up on your tippy toes, your heel is up, and you're extending your ankle, and you are in what's called a plantar flexion position. Okay, so toes up, walking on heels, dorsiflexion. Heels up, walking on toes, tippy toes. The thing about tippy toes has those P's in it, right? Tippy toes, plantar flexion, P. Okay, magnificent. If we look at some of the muscles involved, we see two posterior muscles here. There's this big muscle called the gastrocnemius, literally means belly of the leg, and it sits right on top of a slender muscle called the soleus. The word soleus basically means flat or thin. So gastrocnemius, soleus, those two muscles are your plantar flexors. So they are going to get you up on your tippy toes. They share a common tendon. The tendon here is called the calcaneal tendon. It's also known as the Achilles tendon. If you know your Greek mythology, Achilles was the Greek hero, and that was his weak spot where he got shot with an arrow and died. What else? Origin insertion, we got to know it for the gastrocnemius, but not the soleus. Gastrocnemius originates on the femur, lateral and medial condyles, comes down and inserts onto the calcaneus via that Achilles tendon. Now, those are my two plantar flexor muscles. There is a single dorsiflexor we're going to learn. He's right here at the very front of the shin. He's actually easy to feel. If you grab your own shin and you feel kind of the outside of your shin, like just to the lateral of your shin bone, and you pull your toes up, you should feel this muscle popping. It is your tibialis anterior. It's right next to the tibia, and it's very much in the front. Okay, wonderful. Side view. From the other side, we got the gastrocnemius here. We got the soleus hanging out next to it, and we got the calcaneal or Achilles tendon down below. Gastrocnemius, we see its pair of bellies right there. Remember, it originates on the medial and lateral condyles. That's why it's got these two bumps here. All right, another view, another model, gastrocnemius, soleus, and next to the tibia, in the front, the tibialis anterior. If we look at a human person, gastrocnemius bulging right there, go down a bit below the bulge is going to be the soleus, and we go down a bit more, we see the connective tissue of the calcaneal or Achilles tendon. And that is it. All your lab videos for A&P1 are officially done right now. So we're done with lab videos, which is amazing. Give yourself a pat on the back, a round of applause. Good job, and I will see you all later.